Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads. And if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show. And if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. I'm John Pollock alongside Wai Ting on Wednesday night. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John, how are you doing?
I'm okay.
Oh, I know that's sort of okay.
It's been a long day, man. It's been a really long day, so I'm hoping that my energy level, you can lift me up.
It's certainly been a long day, but man, are you ready for...
No, whatever is going to come at the end of your sentence, I'm not ready for it. You could tell me, like coins from the sky. I'm not ready for. I'm barely ready to climb the stairs at the end of this particular show.
It's just that, like the next week's going to be crazy, like just in the world,
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Tuesday, us being Canadians? Like, I feel if I was in the U.S., I think I would be on edge. What I'm expecting is...
as a Canadian, I'm on edge.
Yeah. I think that there's a certain worldly interest in this election more than many of our lifetime.
Than any other, I would say.
Probably. 2016 was important, but I don't think it was... viewed as such until like the day after. And then it was like that to me, the fact you and I were there in the epicenter, that was New York City, that next day will be a day I will never forget as long as I live.
Well, I mean, we've told the story before, but like you and I were there covering the McGregor fight, which happened to be in Madison Square Garden that weekend. And so, like we get there a few days early. It was the night of the election. And so like we went to the bar, checked out a bit of coverage, kind of treating it like any other election. Oh, it's kind of like a sports night.
Were we there Monday or Tuesday? I think we got there. I think we got there on election day, if I recall.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And then, I was so tired. Like I had traveled all day, worked all day. I went to bed early thinking, oh, okay, of course Hillary's going to win. Wake up the next day, the world's going to be normal. I wake up at midnight. And I'm like, John, so what happened? You told me Donald Trump won. And I thought you were shitting me.
What the fuck? That was honestly your response.
That was my reaction. Absolutely. And so, I mean, being in New York, the reaction obviously is going to be, very different than maybe other parts of the world. But yeah, the rest of that week was really strange. Like the very next day, like in New York City, like it was, just mass, like very somber.
Because we went to a bar that was very like pro Hillary, and the early returns are coming in, and it's like people are, pretty excited, and it's almost like it felt like we were at a New Year's Eve party, and we left there around like 8:30, so it's still relatively early, and I think it was after you woke up. It was like 1 a.m. or so that I left our hotel just to walk towards Times Square, and it was. Like, I've never been in a environment where I could see so many people. This wasn't like New Year's Eve level of people in Times Square, but it was a lot of people out there just watching the coverage on the big screens. But it was so quiet. It was unreal. Like, I just, I couldn't believe it. And the next day, like, we saw people crying. It was just such a somber mood in New York City. And it was like, I was like, I'm semi-detached as a Canadian, but not completely. So it's like, I certainly have, feelings about it, but it was just to be there. It certainly, I think, had much more of an impact than if, say, we had been back home just watching the coverage.
Yeah, like seeing the reaction in New York, honestly, like, to me, it didn't really hit me like why people were so upset. Because to me, it's like, I was more like, hey, let's see what's going to happen. I mean, how much can this guy really do? Like, I mean, they have a whole system set up so that nobody can really get too crazy. Well, 4 years later, I absolutely understand why people were so upset. And so it's all leading up to this next week and why this is so important. It's been, a lot of that real kind of anxiety really come to fruition for a lot of people. And so, yeah, well, it's just a big week. And again, you don't need us to remind you. If you have the privilege to vote, please do so.
Do you think we will have a winner this time next week? Because I won't say most, but a lot of people are expecting there to be a disputed election, and this thing is going to drag, like year 2000 dragging.
Oh, God, I have no idea. I mean, if there's, like, when you say drag, I mean, what needs to happen, for that to occur? Has there ever been...
Okay, let's play a scenario, okay? I'm going to give you a sentence, and you tell me if you believe that both candidates are capable of delivering this statement. Congratulations on the victory. I'm officially conceding.
Okay, so what happened in previous years?
Well, in previous years, we've had a relatively safe transfer of power, a non-controversial transfer of power. The major exception of our lifetime being in 2000, when it came down to the state of Florida and a mess of an election night where networks had called it for Gore, then retracted their call, then Fox News called it for Bush, and then it was disputed. And you had to recount the ballots. You had to go through, everyone had to learn what a hanging Chad was. It was a month of insanity. And I think that's a very possible outcome here, that this time next week, we are just looking at a disputed election.
So would we get like a Royal Rumble 1994 scenario?
Yeah, that would exactly be it.
Right. Yeah, I suppose it's possible. Anything is possible in 2020. There could be somehow coins falling from the sky. I don't know.
Who knows? We can hope for the best. Maybe this thing will turn out. There's just a winner-loser.
I just hope, like, no matter what, I just hope like there's safety at the end of it. It's anyway. Yeah, a lot can happen.
Well, a lot can happen, including a winner of our weekly draw here on Rewind-A-Dynamite. If you are a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe, then you are going to be entered into this draw that we are about to pick a name from. There will be no disputed outcome. We will have a clear-cut, concise winner, and all the others will just have to concede defeat.
Sounds good to me.
Are we ready to draw a name?
I'm ready.
All right. Wai is going in. He is looking for that name. The winner, the undisputed winner of this week's draw, winner of an item from the Post Wrestling Store, is...
Congratulations to Joshua Ortiz. I believe I know.
Local Joshua Ortiz, yeah.
Exactly. We know Joshua Ortiz from Toronto, so congratulations to you, Joshua.
From Toronto, and I've seen in so many cities throughout Canada and the U.S. The man has never found a local show that he cannot make his way to, or a international event as well.
You know what? At this point, like it's been a yearly occurrence running into Joshua down at WrestleMania weekend. So unfortunately, of course, that didn't happen this year, but. Still, it'll be nice to interact with you just to get a confirmation of your Toronto address, Joshua. So congratulations to you.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you in about 6 years the next time I go to a wrestling show. All right, let's get into it, Wai. Quick site notes. We're not going to go through everything here, but Friday, we're going to have 2 shows coming out. One will be with Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics on Thursday evening. They'll be releasing WWE, their third quarter earnings report, and then the big, this is replacing pay-per-views. It's their earnings call with all of the stock analysts. So that will be happening on Thursday night at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I hate this new doing the call at 5, earnings report at 4 o'clock. Like in the course of my day, like 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, it's just like plan anything in that time. It's just the worst for me that day. So these earnings calls, I'm gonna have to talk to this company.
Talk to Vince.
Get these things back to Thursday mornings. I liked it much better that way. Anyway, Friday, I'll be chatting with Brandon about all the fallout of that. Friday night, we will have Rewind to SmackDown live for our patrons at 10:15 Eastern Time. And then Saturday, it's Halloween, which means movie time. We've got the Rocky Maivia Picture Show. We've got a Halloween 3 review with Davey and Braden. And then Sunday, WH Park will take us into November with the long and winding road with the returning Davey Portman. It is all Davey this weekend, and they will be reviewing the Kenta Kobashi Dr. Death match from August of 1993 as WH continues to navigate 90s All Japan Pro Wrestling.
And if you haven't already listened to it before listening to this podcast, of course, tonight on Up Next, those two will be reviewing, Davey and Braden will be reviewing the Halloween Havoc edition of NXT. And in addition to that, if you go to youtube.com/upnext, you can probably get a replay of their NXT Halloween Havoc to watch along and Halloween party. You can see all the beautiful costumes. I feel really bad. Like, I got a text from Davey asking me if I was going to make an appearance. I didn't have a costume, so I didn't make it. Did you make it, John?
I didn't get a text, so I wasn't invited.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure you're invited.
I guess Davey just assumed.
I'm looking at just the screen cap of this place right now. It is amazing. I see like a warrior, Ultimate Warrior. I see. Well, I don't want to spoil it really. Oh my God, I think I see a slapjack. Oh, jeez. YouTube.com/upnext, everybody. Go check it out.
Check that out. Great Halloween costume party from the Up Next crew. Into the news we go. Very, very sad story today, and that is the passing of Tracy Smothers, the man who had, to me, one of my favorite catchphrases a wrestler ever had. T is for terrible, H is for hell, U is for ugly, and G is for jail, 'cause a thug can't spell.
Wow, fantastic. Excellent.
Tracy Smothers, passing away at the age of 58. He had been open about, he had been battling cancer, had recently been hospitalized, also had problems with his heart. A GoFundMe had been set up not too long ago by Chris Hero, and they were set to do a pair of fundraising shows in November for Smothers and his medical bills. And before I get into his career, just such an outpouring today for Tracy Smothers. And it's not just his contemporaries, but it's really astounding to see what an impact he had in all of these locker rooms, because, he was wrestling up until a year ago. So many young talent that this guy just took under his wing and just seemed to be someone that was a total open book when it came to helping people, tremendous personality that seemed to get along with everyone. And I think it's really something when you have a guy who, started wrestling in 1982, and here you have a link from that territorial period throughout the 80s, 90s, right up until the present day independent scene. Like, this guy was in the clusterfuck last year and just seemed to be someone that all of these young performers today, and like multiple generations of them, just glowing about this guy.
Yeah, it seems like everybody was cool with him. Or it seemed like he was cool with almost everybody, no matter what age. And just to see, we do a Rewind-A-Way, retro review podcast, and to see him pop up in early 90s.
We just did the Bash from 1990, one of the most famous tag matches with the Midnight Express against Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers from 30 years ago.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with him through his ECW run. So, for me, it's almost like a bit of a, discovery to see him in that sort of perhaps, original iteration where he might have been more well known. But yeah, certainly a very varied and long career.
Yeah, he went through many territories early on, Florida, Memphis, and a lot of people got to see him through his teaming with Steve Armstrong, and they went through various names. They were, they were the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys. Then, in the NWA, they were just the Southern Boys, and eventually the Young Pistols. The various names that they went through, but that's where on a national level where a lot of people got to see them was there in the late 80s into the 90s. As part of the NWA and WCW. They were U.S. tag champions at one point, but that was a time when it was such a deep tag division. That was always a hallmark of a lot of NWA cards was their tag division and splintering it because you also had your United States tag titles. And, you know, if you go out and see some of their matches with the likes of the Midnight Express and a whole host of others, that Great American Bash 1990 match, it's a spectacular tag match from that era. You know, throughout that time, he left WCW in 1992, and that's where he goes to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, where he had his biggest singles run, with Jim Cornette launching that particular territory. And he came in, and right off the bat, he cuts this promo about his heel turn in WCW. And since he's coming in as the big baby face, he cuts this promo explaining like all the suits at TBS, and it just soured him. And he had to basically talk himself out of this heel turn that all these fans had seen from him, so that he could have this big babyface run in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And he was the guy that really established the Beat the Champ title that they had, which was not completely different from the King of Pro Wrestling title that New Japan's just installed. But the idea of the Beat the Champ title was you would become the holder of this title, and then for each match you'd win, the pot would raise until you would hit $5,000. And if you hit 5 matches in a row, you get $1,000 per win. Then it would be vacated, and you'd get the $5,000 in storyline. So he was kind of attached to that title. He also won the Smoky Mountain Wrestling heavyweight title. And once Smoky Mountain went out of business, you know, he would pop up for that run in the WWF where they renamed him Freddie Joe Floyd, which was a total play off of the Briscoe brothers and their full names. You know, he was really just in an enhancement role in WWF. But then he had the stint in the USWA where they had their affiliation with the WWF. So they had their own kind of version, their own local contingent of the Nation of Domination, which Smothers joined and renamed himself Shaquille Ali after Shaquille O'Neal and Muhammad Ali. And it kind of served as like a precursor for what we would see in ECW, like this more comedic version of this guy who has no concept of his cultural identity. Going to ECW as part of the full-blooded Italians and just playing it like for all it was worth, and just seeing him like, here's this veteran from the territorial days that was able to adapt to a totally different time period in pro wrestling and do it in an entertaining fashion. Him and Guido won the tag titles briefly together in ECW, and then, you know, he just like went all over the place, like just being like journeyman on the independent scenes. Like he had a stay in OVW in 2000 when they were attached to the WWF, and just went all over the place right up until, you know, these last few years where he was a constant on AEW shows, did Game Changer wrestling shows. Back when IWA Mid-South was kind of going through that period where you had the likes of CM Punk and Colt Cabana and Chris Hero were mainstays, getting like a lot of like newsletter coverage through their work in IWA Mid-South. Like Smothers was there, and they all looked at him as a huge mentor to them at the time. Punk put out quite a tribute for Tracy Smothers today. And as I said, like he wrestled up until last year. His last match was in October of last year in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And at the end of last year, he announced that he had cancer and was also having the heart problems and had just been hospitalized over the past couple of weeks. He also put out a book earlier this year. So, I mean, at least he did get to put out a book before he passed away. He was a guy that, you know, just endless stories, just given like this resume of all the different places and people and different generations he worked. But I think it's a real tribute to him that it's very easy in this industry to come up in a time period and you're very much locked to that, and you're taught a certain way and you believe like these are the parameters of which I was taught, and therefore this is the right way to do it, or the wrong way conversely. And I think the ones that are able to adapt the most, they're the teachers. They are the ones that understand like the next generations. Like you adapt and you can take principles from all different eras, and it's all professional wrestling. And he seemed to be one of those guys that was not this rigid person about, you know, a strict convention of principles for wrestling, and that was reflected in all of these different people that he was able to work with and mentor.
Seemed like an incredibly colorful career, and not very old, 58. It's a shame.
So we have a full story up on postwrestling.com if you want to check out more of that. The other two stories here, they're not specific to pro wrestling, although there are ties to it. Adam Schefter of ESPN is reporting that the NFL, they're setting up for the Super Bowl, which is currently scheduled for February 7th. And the tie-in to wrestling is that it's taking place at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, which is where we expect WrestleMania to be next year. And we've talked about before the fact that the government in Florida, they have been, just go for it. If you guys want to have full crowds, like they've told like the home teams in Florida, like you can do it, but it's the NFL that's been capping themselves. And Adam Schefter's reporting that the NFL is kind of aiming for 20% capacity at the Super Bowl, which would mean around 13 to 15,000 people, which is like, think of the revenue that the NFL is foregoing here without any kind of government regulation that they're being bound by. I guess, and the NFL has also put out a statement about this, not necessarily stating this to be the fact, but said that, it'll probably be around 20%, although that figure could grow once they get closer to the game. It is several months away, but it would be 20% capacity with fans and pods 6 feet apart wearing masks. So this is the case of like the NFL sort of instituting their own protocol. And I guess the question will be, if we find WrestleMania in the same stadium, like ultimately WWE is, it feels like, going to be the ones controlling like their protocols. Will they be as strict as the NFL? One of the indicators might be like the fact that they very much, I think, have that ability to open up right now, and they haven't. And I think much of it will come down to, for like a large scale national, international company like the NFL or the WWE will be, how much public scrutiny they will face if they just went ahead and did it all. I think that's something they do care about. I think that public image, how they might appear to other sponsors in the future, to TV networks, I still think that will be something that'll be there to kind of keep them in check, So it just seems to indicate that, like, Florida is sort of like the parent who's like, you want to try that? Go for it. Just, don't tell your mom, like that type of thing. But it's like the child knows better than the actual parent. So do you see WrestleMania drawing 15,000 people in this climate?
15,000. WrestleMania.
Traveling, you would assume, is going to be way, way down. And
are we talking LA?
No, now we're talking Tampa.
Florida. Right, Tampa. 15,000. I think they could do it. Like with people driving, with people from nearby states, Florida itself. I think it's doable.
I do think it's going to be, like, just looking at it now, like this could all be completely irrelevant by the time we get to WrestleMania time next year, because it's several months away. But I think given that it's Florida, I think you are going to see a lot of independent companies take their chances, and if they can book buildings, they will. And I think they're going to try, as opposed to California, where I think it would be much more restrictive.
How many people can fit on that Jericho cruise?
Oh Lord, I don't know what the exact number is.
Okay, well, that thing sold out, and like, I think 15,000. I think they'll hit it.
It's a good point. Like they did not have any problem selling that those cabins. Did you follow any of the stuff from the World Series last night?
Not really, no.
So
oh yes, I have. Yeah, Alex Patel actually put a thread up on the forum. Yeah.
So the big story, the Dodgers winning the World Series, but what happened was one of their players, Justin Turner, there was an inconclusive test. And what it sounds like is that typically they've been doing the testing for each game the day prior, and they've been getting the results before the game. So for whatever reason, Justin Turner, there was an inconclusive test and he was playing. And I guess they rushed through to get another test. And after the seventh inning, he was taken out of the game. And afterwards, they announced that it was due to a positive COVID test. And, people were asking, like, should the game have been stopped? And then afterwards, the Dodgers win the game, and he returns to the field for the celebration. And apparently, like, the MLB officials had tried to get him to leave, and he refused. Was not staying socially distant. He didn't have a mask on the whole time. And then this guy goes on Twitter afterwards and says, "Hey, I'm feeling fine. I don't have any symptoms." And MLB came out today with a statement, and they pretty much threw this guy under the bus. But it has brought about a lot of questions just about enforcement. Like, there's a lot of onus you put on Justin Turner for this, but also, like, how does that happen? Like, for whatever you want to say, like, there is no way that any wrestler or fighter of any company we follow is testing positive and then somehow getting into the, for lack of a better term, field of play. Like, that just, and this guy's around. There were family members that were in this bubble that were on the field celebrating with the players. It was, like, insane that this happened.
Yeah. It wasn't a very good story to read. So was this? You're saying it wasn't an inconclusive test?
The first one was an inconclusive test,
okay.
And I don't know if they did a separate test or just anyway. It was like later on in the game they got the conclusive result that he was positive.
I guess his thinking was, "Hey, I've already played 7 innings of this game. Like, if he's positive, then, like, people have already been exposed." I guess that was his thinking. But either way, it's a really bad look. It's a bad look for the team. It's a bad look for the MLB's ability to enforce these rules. I mean, it's a case where I think, the socially responsible thing to do would be to celebrate on your own. Like, it's as tough as it might be, like, your championship victory for your team. You wanted to go out there. I think the message that it sends is definitely a big stain on, like, the entire league, honestly. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where if you ask him, like, he'll probably say he has no regrets. But let's just hope, none of these results come back with positives later.
The Observer had a story on Tuesday night about issues coming out of the Performance Center from last Friday, and this was going around on Tuesday regarding talent having to quarantine. Now, we don't have a ton of details on this or any kind of numbers or anything like that. Fightful did add that NXT does hold, like, in-house live events just to, keep, tabs on talent and progress that's being made. And one of these was held last Friday. And Fightful reported that many, if not all, who had attended last Friday had been asked to quarantine. So we don't have many more details beyond that. You and I have not seen NXT yet, but all of the matches that have been advertised happened. So it seemed like they went ahead tonight with NXT with the wrestlers that were scheduled to do matches. Like, it didn't seem any of the in-ring talent was impacted by this. I did reach out to WWE. They did not comment on this, or at least have not responded. So, and that's typically, they don't typically comment on these stories. Like, there is their decision of not really addressing any of this.
Yeah. I wasn't.
It's got, like, I hate to say it, but, like, these stories now coming out of the Performance Center, like, they're not shocking, and they're almost becoming, like, every couple of weeks, like, a story like this pops up.
I would say it's especially not shocking when you see some of the people who work within that facility tweeting the things that they have. And, I'm referring to Road Dogg in particular this past week, just continuing to really downplay this entire thing. And I imagine, from what I gather, it seems like they're even within the roster themselves, within the people that work within that facility, there's a lot of dissent and disagreement about how serious people are taking it. So that can't be a comfortable environment for people to practice or train or create within. That, I mean, it really is all something that I think, requires like, leadership to really come in and say like, yeah. I really, at this point, it's like we're almost 8 months into this whole thing. I don't know how much is going to change.
No, I mean, you're running classes in a gym. And I mean, we've seen like through all the cases of in MMA, like, in gyms, like that's going to be a problem area. So I don't think we can be shocked when stories like this come out. But again, like we don't know specifics about how widespread this is. But anyway, that was coming out of Tuesday's news cycle. Raw rating from Monday night, they did a 0.51 in the demo, 1,732,000 viewers. Really not all that down from last week. They were down 2% in viewers, 2.5% in the demo. I mean, negligible. But we did see a big first to third hour drop, 15% drop. In the demo, it was their lowest figure since September 21st. And where they really got hit was young males down 23%. Their 18 to 34 audience fell 20%. And women, 18 to 49, were down 12%. The uptick was with women 12 to 34. That was up 14%. This was going against the NFL game on Monday night as well, but no World Series competition for them. So this is largely like the average we've been seeing throughout Monday Night Football. Like that kind of 1,000,007 and change is sort of like the average that they've been falling into. So no strong takeaways from the number this week other than, certain demos were down. And I would say probably next week, it's the night before the election. I think cable news is going to be through the roof for the time being, and it's not going to end next Tuesday night. There's probably going to be, a whole wave of it after the election as well. That's going to be, something to watch for the Wednesday night shows, for all shows as well. Just the amount of cable news coverage, because there could be just a surge of people that are seeking out news shows.
It'll be the biggest story in the world. So, yeah.
Final topic here I wanted to talk about was on Tuesday night, Impact Wrestling came out of Bound for Glory, and they did the big Johnny Bravo Rosemary wedding, which included, as much as we were all debating, two men breaking out into song last week, a man was risen from the dead as well when Havoc lost a match where the stipulation was she had to go into the undead realm to resurrect the corpse of James Mitchell, which she did, and he came back to life on this show. And our wedding featured the shooting of Johnny Bravo. And throughout the night, I mean, this was, I'm going to say 99%, this was Don Callis, because this was the total tribute to Who Shot JR, where
is he a Dallas fan?
Oh, he's a major Dallas fan.
Oh.
So what they did in the episode is that throughout this wedding, Johnny Bravo has been slowly making enemies along the way. So throughout the night, we had all these different scenes with people that were all out for Johnny Bravo. So you have all these different suspects, and then as the wedding concludes, the lights go out and we hear a gunshot. And when the lights come on, there is a presumably dead Johnny Bravo who has been shot. And Tommy Dreamer doing his best, Bruce Campbell, to end the show. And Wai, I sent you this clip. You're somewhat watching it just cold. And what did you think of Who Shot Johnny Bravo?
Well, you told me to watch it. Davey Portman, who does the Impact review, he was he really wanted me to watch it too. So I was watching it, and I mean, immediately when you think wedding, you think, something crazy is going to happen at the end. I guess I didn't expect, we've seen whodunits done plenty of times in pro wrestling, and typically they come in the form of who attacked this guy backstage? Who attacked this guy in the NXT parking lot? Who ran over this guy? Cars, whodunits with cars. That's a really popular thing in wrestling. I don't know if I've ever seen a whodunit where they literally shoot somebody in the chest with the gun. So that was a first. And, at this point, does anything in wrestling really surprise me? Like in 2020? No, not really. Like we've gone everywhere with it. We've gone like into people's brains. We've gone into like, if it was possible, I'm sure we'd have a wrestling angle in space by now. So a guy literally getting shot. I mean, it was very campy in feel, and I think it's fun. Listen, the fact that you and I are talking about it right now, the fact that Davey told me to watch it, you told me to watch it, tells me it was a big success for Impact.
I'll fully say that I think with Impact, the rules are, if not skewed out the window. I think Impact you watch with the idea that here's a company that throws a lot of stuff against the wall. And I think that people do apply different rules to Impact. That here's a show that is trying to build and find an audience. I don't think this stuff generally is going to grow your audience, but I think it will keep your remaining audience like satisfied. You're going to do this murder mystery that I think honestly, like there's a lot of this stuff that's so out there that does turn off people that we would see in Lucha Underground and other places. But in a niche company that Impact is, I think it's more so acceptable. Like, as I mentioned, like they have killed off people in the past. Like that's how they wrote off Allie, was killing her off with Rosemary when she left the company. And they have, in Jim Mitchell's case, brought them back from the dead. So I think you are watching with a different set of principles.
I mean, in terms of like done that too.
Killed people.
Yeah, like the Undertaker. I mean, anytime like the guy started off as a zombie.
They killed Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
and then kind of just ignored that. Yeah, I think it's something for Impact to try, that they are going to. What I feel this is going to be, though, like this is all the Wrestle House crew, and I feel this is going to be kind of like a very much like comedy storyline. We'll see what they do. Like if this is like,
I mean, it's this Johnny Bravo dude getting killed. It's not like, a main eventer. Like it's a comedy character getting killed.
Also on the show, they brought up Heath's injury, and they're making it part of the story now because after Rhino won the Battle Royal, he's due for his big contract, and he's trying to downplay any kind of injury because he hasn't signed this contract yet. So that's the storyline they're going with there. They're also going to do the Knockouts Tag Title Tournament starting in 3 weeks on November 17th. So they're putting together the female teams. And we had the on-screen debut of Robert Evans as Barrister Robert Evans, who was the lawyer for Deonna Purrazzo, which was this long tease of a lawsuit, which Scott D'Amore said, here at Anthem, we love ourselves a good lawsuit, and was welcoming them to go into litigation and tie up their lawyers for 6 or 7 years. They're fine with that. But instead, Deonna Purrazzo backed down from this threat and will take on Su Yung in a rematch next week. So those were the keys on Impact on Tuesday night.
Litigation is making a comeback in pro wrestling in 2020.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess lawsuits are the way to go for. I wonder, maybe there will be
a category in the best lawsuit scripted.
Well, I wonder if Rosemary, because her husband was her husband. This was after they said I do and were pronounced man and wife, that maybe Rosemary can file like a wrongful death lawsuit or something, like a civil suit beyond like criminal proceedings to whoever is caught.
You're going to have to get a lawyer on to break it down, I think.
Well, there you go. All right, let's get into Dynamite, a taped edition of the show, which meant the return of our canned audio.
I've really missed it. It makes a huge difference to me.
I generally like the canned audio. I think it was like excessive at times.
Really? I didn't notice it myself.
Well, we began cold with Dasha interviewing Wardlow and MJF. And this was sort of going back to prior to MJF challenging Jon Moxley, where they brought up the fact that, MJF will be proud if Wardlow wins, but if he ever becomes champion, MJF is the champion because Wardlow is the property of MJF, and Wardlow reluctantly agrees to this. So this is very much the Ted DiBiase, Andre the Giant, where if Wardlow wins, he is expected to hand the title to MJF.
Yeah, and, they are, I would say, pretty infrequently bringing this up. As, we'll see after this match, like Wardlow doesn't win. So, but, nonetheless, they want to remind you that Wardlow has this story going on in the back, really just ultimately setting up his babyface turn, but probably months in advance. It's a very slow burn. I'm enjoying this pace.
And then Sammy Guevara walks in, throws down the Inner Circle jacket, and he's pissed off, telling him he hopes MJF never joins the Inner Circle, and he's going to make sure of it. MJF tells Sammy, I've got a note on some of your promos. Don't. And said that Sammy looks like a guy that sells Adderall to middle schoolers. And Sammy came back.
That is such a perfect description of how he was.
Yeah, I like, all due respect here to Sammy, like this was a 10-8 promo in favor of MJF. Sammy just gets into MJF's face and tells him that I'm thinking of all the things I'm going to do to you. And MJF is just, this guy just jumps through your screen in every one of these segments.
We talk a lot about, MJF and his interactions with Chris Jericho throughout this entire feud, but it's I think the interaction between MJF and Sammy Guevara and some of the other members of Inner Circle that are going to be just as interesting. I love the idea that Sammy Guevara, a heel himself, hates this guy, is, jealous perhaps of this guy's and Chris Jericho's attention that he's giving to MJF. It's a really nice little side story.
And then we just had them immediately walk out to the entrance, and it's Wardlow versus Hangman Page in our first semifinal match. And I thought a really good match between these two. Another great kind of outing for Wardlow to really show, all the potential in this guy. He caught a pescado attempt by Page and then just drilled him through the barricade with this spear. Wardlow's dominating him, misses a swanton coming off the top. Jim Ross did not approve of this decision in Wardlow's arsenal. There's a German suplex. Page lands on the feet, and a clothesline takes Wardlow to the floor. Page hits the top rope moonsault to the floor, and then running shooting star press. Wardlow kicks out at 1. Wardlow then ducks a buckshot lariat. He hits the F10, but Page rolls to the floor to avoid the cover. And then Page ends up fighting with him on the top turnbuckle and tosses him off the turnbuckle with a throw, almost like a fall-away slam, and then hits a buckshot lariat. Wardlow only goes down to one knee. It takes 2 buckshot lariats to win the match in 9:45. Wardlow is just this great athletic monster, and I think that they kind of balance those two very well together. Like this guy who's, very much like a Brian Cage style of monster who can also do some very athletic things. And they got 10 minutes here. I thought this was a great showing for Wardlow, and Hangman Page plays a great underneath babyface.
Mm-hmm. I thought this was an excellent match, and from my immediate recollection, I feel like it might have been my favorite Wardlow match thus far in AEW. I thought he looked great while he was in control, kept that Giants presence really well, had offense that was slower like a Giants, but also spectacular when it needed to be, and it wasn't over the top. It was never boring. It was powerful. It was engaging, and Page, very good selling, very good comebacks. What I particularly loved about this was the finish. And I hate to continue to make comparisons, but I have to in this case, because especially with the way WWE books these types of matches, over the past year, it's gotten really bad. But this was a match between two guys, both of them up and coming, that you definitely could have seen WWE giving you a non-finish or some type of bullshit DQ thing just to get out of it. And they found a way in this match to book themselves out of this match that was conclusive while making both men come out of it stronger than they were before. Hangman Page gets the hard-fought victory, but it took two of his very powerful finishing move, the buckshot lariat, in order to do it. And you had Wardlow control the entire match, dominate, while Hangman just kind of barely squeaks by. Again, sacrificing, having to use two of his finishers. The first one only putting Wardlow down to his knees. In terms of ranking, of course, it's going to be Page at the end of this. So Wardlow had to lose, and I don't think he loses anything because in people's minds, Wardlow is already ranked underneath Hangman Page, who Page is on the cusp of that stardom, and Wardlow is a long-term project with a lot more room to grow. So all you needed to do was to have him dominate, to show that he's more impressive and has a lot more in the tank that he's not even showing yet, and give Page a huge challenge and obstacle to overcome. So by the end of it, clean finish and advance both men. It's not really. I don't think it should be that hard.
Are you saying this was a better semifinal than Savio Vega and the Roadie?
Rewind-A-Dynamite number 73, currently right now on your Post Wrestling Cafe Patreon feeds. That was not a tournament I care to ever revisit again. You know what? Full Gear really could use a Kiss My Foot match, though.
Well, there's still a week left.
Maybe an I Quit Kiss My Foot match for the main event.
Okay, yeah. Maybe Kingston and Moxley take it to the next level. Speaking of which, Jon Moxley, his latest promo, he's inside the gym, reflecting on his title reign and making this the top title. He says, for all these months, it's been business, but this one with Eddie Kingston, it's personal. And what added to this promo is that we never heard from him, but we just got shots of Eddie Kingston praying with the rosary.
I wonder what they shot that footage for. I mean, maybe it was for his Titantron or something. And I don't know, just felt like using it here.
Man, I just want to hear Eddie Kingston speaking Latin, giving the last rites or something to Jon Moxley.
That would be interesting. Yeah. I like the promo a lot from Moxley here. He was able to, in a brief amount of time, get really deep into sort of the psychological aspect of this I Quit match. It's a match that I think when we've seen I Quit matches promoted maybe as recent as, I'm going to make an exception for Roman versus Jey Uso because I thought that had layers to it attached to it as well. But other I Quit matches we've seen promoted in the past are usually a way of really kind of testing the endurance. It's more of a physical test than anything else. In this instance, though, I thought Moxley was able to convey sort of the psychological purpose of an I Quit match. It's not just something that'll be physically demanding. It's also meant to be emotionally scarring. Getting somebody as proud as Eddie Kingston to say the words, I quit. I thought that was really well conveyed here.
Yeah, he says there's no room for Eddie Kingston in AEW. This is for the great athletes that do the work. And Moxley crushes windpipes, skulls, and he crushes egos. Protect your neck, Eddie. All this needed was a bitch. This is an awesome promo.
Yeah, very good.
I just want to get Eddie Kingston praying now. Could you imagine Eddie Kingston in his delivery, reciting Our Father or something?
I don't know how that goes.
Our Father, who art in heaven. You bitch.
Man, that's a church I'd go to.
That would be great. Father Kingston. Well, the priest took on Matt Sydal next, who was accompanied by the Butcher, the Blade, and the Bunny. And we got more subtext here to the Bunny's departure from QT Marshall after maxing out his credit cards.
Okay.
On what? What did she buy? Were they all returned? She gone on an Amazon spree because not a ton of places are open.
Yeah, I'm guessing maybe at this point, maybe toilet paper, preparing for the next, I don't know, pandemic, panic buying. So, yeah, who knows? They
really pulled the plug on this story.
I can't say it was doing a whole lot. I mean, they were largely relegated to dark, so they could have not even explained it, and I don't think I would have really questioned it too much.
Eddie Kingston is pissed that Moxley isn't here. He's done talking and then kicks the camera operator out of the ring. He says, I don't care if they tell you to be in here. Get out of my world. You never trained to be in here. He says your world champion is a coward, and then he points out that Matt Sydal was the Joker in the Battle Royal, so bring out the Joker.
Called him the Joker, also like reminded everybody that he never technically lost, and so he even did a brief tease Lance Archer, which they cut to, so maybe teasing a future program between these two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, him and Jake were just hanging out in the crowd. So during this match, Tony and JR brought up past I Quit matches, the one with Flair and Terry Funk and Blanchard and Magnum at Starrcade. After the break, Sydal leaps from the mat for this head scissors, then delivers a Meteora, goes for a crucifix. Kingston kicks out, nails him with a body shot, and then lands the spinning back fist, and then applies Jon Moxley's bulldog choke, submitting Matt Sydal in 8-10, but then they bring the mic over and make Matt Sydal say, I quit, as Kingston pretends that he's Jon Moxley.
I like the match. I think Sydal is a really good fit for AEW. In ring, the man is incredibly consistent and spectacular, and I think this is a company where he'll get over probably more so just wrestling than cutting any sort of promo or backstage vignette each week. And in his case, I kind of prefer just to see him wrestle. But man, I didn't like him. I didn't like them making him say, I quit like this, I think you could do something like this with like a Griff Garrison or a Pineapple Pete. But to me, like Matt Sydal, especially after like the bit of hype you put on him coming in as the Joker in that Battle Royal, I just think he's a bit higher ranked of a veteran to just like be put in a role like this. To me, I feel like him saying I quit should be treated with a bit more significance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't view Matt Sydal all that high in the hierarchy that this was something like detrimental to him. I mean, you are building up your main event, which is, to me, should be your major priority, but I can see that. This is kind of the role I see Sydal being at.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, judging by like the past month, it's not like they've given him any sort of big feud other than, I suppose, Michael Nakazawa finishing that whole thing. So yeah, maybe he's only there to kind of fulfill this, semi-jobber role.
Then we had our split screen interview with Excalibur with the Young Bucks, and then in the other screen was FTR and Tully Blanchard. And Excalibur asks Matt, how's your ankle? It's fine. It's fine. Nick says, he's hurt. Matt says, I'll be at Full Gear. My ankle's fine. Dax Harwood is asked, why would you jeopardize this dream match by attacking the ankle? He says, we are not worried about dream matches. We want to be champions, and winners cement their legacies. And Excalibur notes that he's been friends with the Bucks for a long time, and FTR points out, yeah, we know. That's why you have a job here. Matt explains that sometimes good people do bad things, and they don't regret what they've done lately because they had lacked an edge. They call FTR pricks, and they have manipulated their friends. FTR gets bored because they're not being asked any questions, so they walk out of the interview, and it ends with the Bucks stating, Matt stating, if they don't win the tag titles at Full Gear, we will never challenge for the tag titles again. And Excalibur's reaction was, wow, well, really? So this dream match, the stakes have somehow gotten higher, and it just like fades out and we end very abruptly. This felt like Excalibur was legitimately hearing this stipulation for the first time. I really don't think this feud has risen to the level of people's expectations of where they would be a week and a half out from their first meeting. And part of my biggest issue is that, especially because Matt Jackson did like 90% of the talking, this just feels so unnatural for Matt Jackson.
Playing heel, you mean? Or at least like...
I've seen him play heel fine. Like, especially during matches, I think he can play it really well. But in these segments, I don't know. It's missing for me. Like, I just don't feel like there is like a sincerity behind this. Like, it feels like I'm cutting a heel promo is all I hear when he's talking in this character. And I really am confused as to why they have gone this way, and now it's like we're backtracking because it's for the betterment of the match to have this dynamic where we now have this stipulation that makes you want to root for the Young Bucks. But like, what a contrived way that we've gotten here for this big dream match that, I don't know, this to me is like one of those WWE matches where you've got this great match and the storylines have, to me, actually taken away from the match and not done what they should, which is enhancing it.
Seeing sort of the end result of it all at this point, I mean, I think I'm pretty safe to say that, yeah, it was probably kind of misguided to have the Bucks go so heelish, attacking Tony Schiavone, kicking people backstage, even though it was like done in sort of like a, oh, cool, badass, kind of comedic way, them throwing money at Tony Khan. I ultimately feel like it didn't really work, in my opinion. I think by the end here, part of the reason maybe is because we never really quite got a reason for why they were changing so much. You didn't get that until now, where you had, basically Matt say, we were missing an edge, and FTR doing what they did to our friends unlocked it within us, and we liked the edge that we have, so we're going to keep it. I mean, that kind of makes a bit more sense, but ultimately it doesn't necessarily make for a team that I think I want to cheer for. I thought maybe went a little bit too long without that explanation, and right now they are trying to, give Matt Jackson a body part to work over or to sell throughout the match to make us sympathize with him, while at the same time he's still trying to be sort of that stubborn, cocky heel. When maybe it would have been just a bit more better if it was just straightforward. The Bucks as baby faces facing a heel team in FTR. It definitely does seem a bit confusing by the end. Well, I'm not going to say confusing because I understand it, but I don't know how effective it is. As far as the segment itself, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good interview that kind of like laid the cards on the table finally for the Bucks. I actually quite liked Excalibur in this role. It's a role that's usually reserved for Tony or JR, but I think Excalibur, obviously has a personal connection with the Bucks. He had a very interesting, kind of believable line of questioning. Everything he asked felt of value, and it didn't just feel like a guy throwing out scripted questions out there.
Yeah, I actually think that, I guess they wanted FTR to be part of this. I think actually you could have got through without them and just save FTR for their promo segment next week. Not that it was a terrible detriment, but I'm with you. Like, Excalibur was the natural one to have do this particular segment, but we have one more week to go. Yeah.
Do you have what do you think about them putting the stipulation up there? Like, if they,
I think in the sense, I think one thing is that in AEW, you do take these stipulations seriously. Like, we've built off the fact that, Cody did this a year ago or earlier this year. And, it was a year ago. It was a year ago at Full Gear, right? That he challenged Jericho and lost. So I think there is that understanding that, a stipulation, this is not like a year ago, the discussion was, well, does this mean Cody has to win? Because there's no way they'll honor this stipulation. Well, here we are a year later, and they've honored it. And I don't think they're going to be creating a secondary set of tag titles for the Young Bucks. So you can argue if that helps or hurts the match, having, this back against the wall story along with the injury for the Young Bucks.
I don't think it hurts. I mean, I think it helps. It creates another talking point, maybe kind of confuses perhaps who might win or who might lose. I don't think the match really needed it personally, but like, the fact that they were doing it suggests that they could be telling a longer term story of the Bucks no longer being able to chase the tag team titles, or it means they'll win.
The town hall was hosted by Tony Schiavone and Dasha Gonzalez. So we had the Inner Circle and MJF in the ring, and then various members of the roster would get up to the podium to ask questions. Starting with Luchasaurus, who asks MJF, with the power of economics, how can you contribute to the earning potential and prosperity of the Inner Circle? And I just thought this was awesome that MJF gets this crazy question, and he says, actually, I have a chart to forecast the Inner Circle's earnings, and I had the top financial advisors helping me out. And he puts up this graph with the upward trajectory of the Inner Circle's earnings if he joins.
Wow. Yeah, charts and graphs. Yeah, we all love them in pro wrestling, don't we? That's how you know somebody's taking it seriously, charts and graphs.
Maybe Chris Harrington's going to be joining the Inner Circle.
Maybe he's the secret guy pulling the strings this whole time.
He could be. Then we got Britt Baker and Rebel, and I don't know if you saw the clip from Donald Trump's town hall where there was this older lady that got up and she just tells Donald Trump that you've got such a great smile. You look so handsome when you smile. And then she I don't want to say laid into it, but she gave a pretty intense question to Donald Trump after buttering him up with this, how nice his smile looks. But anyway, that's exactly what Rebel was channeling here. Baker then says that MJF has a terrible track record of holding on to friends, and Jericho responds saying, I'm not a dipshit like Cody, and we won't be letting MJF into our inner circle with our planning and strategies. And if MJF ever tries to turn on us, we'll knock his teeth down his throat. And MJF is trying to quell the tension here from the Inner Circle. Peter Avalon asks if he can join the group. They all just laughed and told him to fuck off. And then we get Eric B. from Cody, Wyoming. And Eric Bischoff was actually there.
Yes, did not expect an Eric Bischoff cameo. I really like Eric Bischoff in this sort of once a quarter cameo type of role. I'd much prefer to, all the other TV roles he might have had.
He's a very good talker. This was very brief. He just got up, he asked a few questions, quoting John F. Kennedy from his inauguration speech, and asks what MJF can do for the Inner Circle. And he says, friendship. And then MJF is asked, what is something the Inner Circle can do for you? And he says, one dent in his armor is not being the best team player, but joining these great men, maybe I can learn how to be. Bischoff calls Jericho a prima donna, so Jericho gets all upset about this, acting like a prima donna. So Shivani tells him to shut up. And they continue to go on here. And then Jericho gets into MJF's face and says, how do we know you're not going to turn on us? And MJF goes over everything he's done the past few weeks. He's given them presents. He gave Jericho the best segment of his career last week. What haven't I done? And Jericho says, you haven't beat me. And I'm going to give you the chance at Full Gear, one-on-one. And if you beat me, you're in. And MJF stares at Jericho, says, I'll do anything to win. And Ortiz tells MJF to shut up. Him and Sammy don't want him in the Inner Circle. He's not sure about, this is Ortiz. He's not sure about Santana or Jake Hager, who's off preparing for a fight. So they challenge MJF and Wardlow to a tag match next week. So it'll be Ortiz and Sammy Guevara against MJF and Wardlow while we're getting Jericho and MJF at the pay-per-view.
Hey, before I forget, great job with your Jake Hager interview, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
That's up there on our free feed right now, so if you haven't checked it out yet, please do so. It was, very interesting to hear him speak about a variety of topics, including politics.
Yes,
at the
end. Is he a member of the Yang Gang? I think he will. I think he'll get his answer of his political leanings.
Yes.
But anyway, I was kind of curious if he would even be part of this segment, because this was done last Thursday, but obviously not. He
didn't need to be there.
No, he really didn't need to be saved for a day to just stand there.
I thought this was a really compelling, very interesting segment. And, of course, the talk coming out of it is this, in my opinion, a very peculiar matchup that they introduced. I think most would have assumed Jericho versus MJF to take place perhaps at the end of this entire program. That might be months down the road after a series of tag team matches, perhaps months of stories of maybe MJF properly being in the Inner Circle and then getting to Jericho versus MJF. Here, they are instead using it as the first match of the storyline, or at least first pay-per-view match of the storyline, as a form of initiation almost for MJF to join the Inner Circle. And so I think it's actually breaking a lot of established convention and rules about pro wrestling storytelling. But judging by the program so far, judging by the ability, the immense talent in these two to tell a proper story or an interesting story, I have nothing but trust for them. I also love, again, all the little side stories of each member of the Inner Circle having their own feelings towards MJF. Like, you can have gone the very easy route and have said every member of the Inner Circle, other than Chris Jericho, hates MJF and they all want him out. But they're all split on the idea, which is far more realistic and I think offers, far more interesting dynamic. They even break up, like, Santana and Ortiz, the two tag partners. They each have their own separate opinion about whether or not they want MJF. So a really simple way of building to next week's tag match with Santana simply picking up the mic, or Ortiz simply picking up the mic and saying, hey, I don't like you and Sammy doesn't like you either, so we're going to team up to try to beat you and Wardlow next week. And a big match added to Full Gear.
It's like the alliances within the tribe on Survivor right before the merger.
Yeah, sure.
My knee-jerk reaction is like yours, that do you want to do this match now when it's just, there's so much more that you can do? But I really do trust the instincts of those that are involved in this. And I do kind of like the idea of one of them loses, and you can also do it that they lose and they have a totally legitimate gripe, like Wardlow could get involved or something, but it's always this lingering thing that these two guys who are always trying to one-up each other, right down to their stake order, one of them will have a win over the other, even though the other might have a plausible excuse for why they lose. And that's kind of why you will always get this powder keg that will explode down the road between them. So I don't hate this out of line. And it's a big match for the pay-per-view. I would say it is as... it's one of the top matches instantly for this pay-per-view on a show that's very like top heavy with your big names in meaningful programs.
Totally agree. And the more I think about it, the less concern I have about like them doing the match here, and then maybe going back to it in a future date. I think like often in wrestling, and maybe in some cases rightfully so, but like we can all get really caught up at, by saying, oh man, this is the first time meeting between these two. How are they going to give it away? Well, if the characters and the story are entirely different the second time around, I mean, the match will be completely different. So that's stands to be the case here, where these two starting out, MJF versus Chris Jericho, the first time around, they're fighting for something that is a bit more kind of, I don't know. They're both heels, they both kind of like each other, but they don't really like each other, but they really do. The second time they do it, you might have some real beef between them after maybe months, or at least weeks of, real contention, real story between them.
Yeah, the goal will be coming out of this. Like, I think ultimately, like the money is in them all being together, even if it's begrudgingly, but then building it to get the audience to actually believe that one of them is not turning on the other. And if you can reach that, then it's mission accomplished, and boom, then you do it when people least expect it.
It's the Owens Jericho thing.
Yeah, I think so. Like hit them when they least expect it, but it makes sense in the end of why it would happen. We got a Team Taz promo, essentially putting over Will Hobbs, but the clock is ticking and he needs to make a decision. Lumberjack match for the TNT title, Cody against Orange Cassidy. Cody is out with Arn, Dustin, and empty bank account Marshall. Immediately, both men go for their big moves. We get a tease of the Orange Punch, the Crossroads, and the Mousetrap that are unsuccessful. And then Cassidy fakes him out for a headlock takeover. And Cody comes back. He's doing the push-ups. Arn's yelling at him to get serious. And Cassidy hits his own vertical suplex, goes to the floor, and hugs the best friends. Then they do a spot where Cassidy takes a punch, falls back, almost like in a crowd surfing motion where the best friends catch him and then put him back up on the apron. Then they catch Cody, but instead of putting him up, they just dump him to the floor. And this causes Cody to nail Trent, who then comes back and sucker punches Cody. We had this half crab applied by Cody, and then Orange is out of the hold and sends Cody to the floor where the Dark Order swarm him, and we have the Dark Order constantly going after Cody, as they promised last week. Meanwhile, Jack Evans and Angelico start beating down on Cassidy. all of the Lumberjacks start fighting, and it leads to Cody superplexing Orange off the turnbuckle to everyone on the floor, so we get the domino spot. Cody Cutter is hit, then Orange comes back with the Stundog Millionaire and the Deep Impact DDT and a beach break, which Cody kicks out of. The Dark Order then distract the referee, allowing John Silver to nail Orange Cassidy. Cody tosses him out and hits the Crossroads for the win, and they explain that Cody didn't see what John Silver did to Orange Cassidy. All the Lumberjacks are brawling in the ring for the big chaotic visual, and then we get a shot of Darby Borden in the rafters.
I mean, he's the type of character...
I didn't get into this that much, to be honest. Like, I thought there was a lot going on here, and I don't know. It's not like this was bad, but I just thought that there was a spark missing in this match for me.
I thought it was decent, but I didn't enjoy it as much as their previous match. The match is, right, at this point. Wasn't this like the second or third?
Well, they did the time limit, and then this one.
It's only the second, right? Yeah, the storytelling is interesting. I think, you continue to see in this match Cody flirting with like a heel turn. He was very cocky against Orange Cassidy to the point where Arn had to, chastise him for not taking it seriously enough. And then in the end, though, it's Arn also helping him cheat to win. So, continuing that tease of Cody and Arn, I suppose, at this point turning. I was definitely surprised that they would have Cassidy. I mean, I'm a little surprised to see them have Cassidy basically fail 3 times to capture this TNT title. But now that like we've seen the match in execution with the finish that they decided, I don't think it really hurts Cassidy all that much. Like, it doesn't really change his position on the card. He's still like a very lovable underdog, and it'll kind of make that like TNT title win eventually seem like that much of a bigger, accomplishment.
And clearing the ring were Billy and Austin Gunn, which was done for a purpose for next week's match. Guy that's really growing on me during this pandemic is Austin Gunn.
Is that right?
This guy is so excited in the crowd. Like, I feel if we got more of him, he'd be aggravating. But
he's the opposite of the opposite Darby Allin.
He's the opposite of Darby Allin. If anything, it's like he's got, I think, some of the appeal of a John Silver, but he might be too over the top if he was overexposed.
Yeah,
he just seems like a happy dude.
I think more Mojo Rawley than John Silver.
Who's that?
I don't know, some guy.
I watch WWE. I'm not familiar with this Mojo. Miro and Kip were with the best friends. They forgave them over the arcade debacle, and they present them with a present for Halloween. Do you get presents for Halloween?
No, not me.
They say trick or treat and attack the best friends, and they admit, we are not sorry. Miro throws Trent into a wall, and Miro proclaims, I will never forgive you. Ever.
And remember, everybody, this is a feud over a arcade controller. So,
yes.
Man, I think it's a really cold feud. I think a disappointing follow-up, honestly, for best friends coming off of that street fight that they had with Proud and Powerful. And a really cold team in like Miro and Kip Sabian. I think this kind of sucks.
Yeah, this feud needs another quarter. They put over Serena Deeb, winning the NWA Women's title last night on the UWN show, beating Thunder Rosa. And then she flew away from LAX to Jacksonville for tonight's show.
I love this, the suspension of disbelief. Please trick me. I know that this show is taped, and I know that you did it last week, but let me believe. Let me believe.
Deeb cut a promo. The game changed last night, and she's defending the title against Layla Hirsch. So the match starts, and there's a long collar and elbow. Hirsch misses in the corner, and Deeb applies his front chancery into a neck breaker through the ropes, and then it's Hirsch running her shoulder into the turnbuckle and targets the arm. Deeb cuts her off with a straitjacket neck breaker, and during the picture-in-picture, the feed cut And then we came back, and it's Hirsch delivering a running knee, and then goes to the top and misses with a moonsault. It was a great-looking moonsault. And then Deeb hits her with like the roll of the dice and hits a reverse neck breaker. Grapevines the arm into the half crab, like the tequila sunrise, and wins by submission. I thought very, very good match here between these two. And then afterwards, Excalibur thanked the NWA for allowing this match to occur.
It's an interesting working relationship that the two of them have going on right now. You know, using here an AEW wrestler to promote an NWA belt on Dynamite. It definitely like makes you wonder about, if any of this has to do with the future status of Thunder Rosa.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly there's going to be that speculation of her dropping the women's title and what that's going to mean for her future. I mean, she's someone that, has gotten very popular over the last 2 months.
Well, I mean, she was also figured into, I would say, it seemed like she was figured into a lot more on Dynamite and AEW itself. Like, it seemed like they were teasing the Shida versus Thunder Rosa rematch somewhere, which hasn't really been alluded to for several weeks now. In fact, I kind of forget about it. But I like Serena Deeb a lot. I liked her a lot in this match. Right now the women's division in AEW is really wide open for anybody to take a step up. And it's not going to take a whole lot, because it's a division that they've kind of gone through a lot of names. None of them have really caught that much steam lately. So in one short week, I think Serena Deeb has immediately catapulted her way up there. She's got.
I thought Layla Hirsch, looked very good in this as well. Like she had a great accounting here.
She apparently had a great match with Hikaru Shida on Dark last night, so that might be worth checking out too. But it almost seems like AEW is sort of always in this, especially their women's division. They're always kind of in this they're trying to get people off of the starting blocks, and for whatever reason, it doesn't always take, but. I think Deeb simply coming out here, having a really solid performance, already puts her in a spot to be ahead of a lot of other AEW women right now on Dynamite. So she's up there, and I guess Abaddon was supposed to be on this show, got injured,
right.
So they took her match off of Tay Conti. But I have to imagine those two are probably in the mix to be kind of pushed up there as well.
Then we got the angle of the night. Alex Marvez is with Hikaru Shida. And Alex Marvez explains that Nyla Rose refuses to wrestle until she is granted a title match against Hikaru Shida. Now, this is where I differ from the AEW Women's Champion, because my response would be, cool, don't wrestle. I'm not going to lose any sleep. But Hikaru Shida says, Nyla, you want me? I want you at Full Gear. And Marvez goes, okay, there's our match. And that is our women's title match for Full Gear.
I mean, if you're Hikaru Shida, I think you probably, you're looking at this division and it's hey, I haven't had a match in a while, or at least I haven't, I want to get on this pay-per-view. I need an opponent. You don't have really anybody else ready yet, so she was probably as eager as Nyla.
Well, yeah, I'm sure the match will be fine. I just thought this setup was just so
it's about as bare bones of a setup as you can.
It was. We didn't even have Nyla appearing here to even issue the challenge in person.
Well, again, so much of it is, I think, it shows you the problem that they've had with pushing somebody like a Hikaru Shida, where they've really made no attempt to tell any sort of story with her. It's just match. Yes, there are limitations, of course, with the language, but you could give her a mouthpiece. You could do you've done. What is it
I'll tell you, the NWA Women's Title feels equal, if not superior, right now to the AEW version.
Oh my God! Just in
it gets more focus. It's man, here's this cross country traveler that's going off and winning this title and just beat Thunder Rosa, who's been given all these, spotlights on this show.
It's that almost active.
Feels.
That's for
it
sure.
does. It feels like that's the championship. It's got the NWA lineage attached to it. It almost feels like this is not a secondary women's title. It feels like it's more of the prominent title. We see more NWA women's title matches than we do AEW women's title matches on the Dynamite.
It's like it's a complaint that like I think has been made for like a good year now with the AEW women's division, and so it seems like this match with Nyla Rose is almost them like going back to the default. Hey, like we have no other opponents, let's go back to Nyla Rose versus whoever, and the match will be, I'm sure, good, but we need story. We need story for the champion. We need story for Hikaru Shida. I mean, if it's going to be Nyla Rose with the championship belt, which I could see them doing, actually. I could see them switching it, and then maybe going to Deeb versus Nyla, perhaps. In the end, you need that time to tell stories with the champion, and we just haven't had that yet.
Shawn Spears is out with Tully Blanchard, and he's taking on VSK. And Spears puts on his glove, which is inspected by Bryce Remsburg. And they did a very good job of putting over Shawn Spears' record. This is what we were talking about last week. He's ranked 5th, or at least was last week, and he's got this 14-2 record. So it's like this guy is the best kept secret of AEW this year is this run he's on. And he immediately kills VSK with the C4, takes his time pinning him. This only goes 29 seconds. I thought this is like a really nice build of Spears. Then he looks out into the crowd and he's being heckled by a man in a bull outfit. And he attacks the bull, who comes into the ring, and wouldn't you know it, it's Scorpio Sky, who lays out Spears with the TKO.
This was another one where it felt like incredibly generic, like in terms of build. I mean, I don't know. I know that they've shown some. Like, I saw some interaction between these two. It was like Sky walking to the back and Spears eyeing him, and then they hate each other. I know it's stemming from what? Like that episode of Dark, right? Like the after Dark?
They've talked about this on Dark. But again, that's...
Like, what was the feud over again? It's like... He came out and did he get attacked afterwards? I don't know. I'm sorry, but like I think it's a very it's a feud. I love both wrestlers, as Scorpio Sky in particular. I'm happy to see Scorpio Sky on Dark, but it's not really a feud that is all that compelling in my opinion.
Yeah, this goes back to that special 1 hour version of Dynamite like a month and a half ago.
Yeah, where like what happened? It was like
stole a moment of from Spears.
Stole the moment. That's right. Yes. Okay.
Next week on the show, they announced Chris Jericho on commentary, MJF and Wardlow against Ortiz and Sammy Guevara, Miro against Trent, Shawn Spears against Scorpio Sky, Cody and the Gun Club against Colt Cabana, John Silver, and Preston Vance, and a face-to-face between Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston, which should be pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Given the promos they've been cutting in the lead up to this.
I can see that being the main event.
And then the pay-per-view lineup, our updated card is Moxley and Kingston in the I Quit match for the AEW title, Cody against Darby Allin for the TNT title, FTR against the tag titles with the stipulation if the Bucks lose, they don't challenge for them ever again, Chris Jericho against MJF, Omega versus Paige, Shida versus Nyla Rose, Hardy versus Sammy Guevara in the Elite Deletion match, and added to the buy-in is Orange Cassidy and John Silver. And I know we've got one more week, but I think like you've got... I almost feel like some of these programs could use an extra week. Like Moxley and Kingston, I think they're pretty much there. Cody and Darby, I think like that could use something more. Mm-hmm. Jericho and MJF is kind of ready. Shida and Nyla Rose is cold. Hardy and Guevara, it was like forgotten about on this show. I just think like it's a lot to cram all this into one more week for the go home show. That I think like some of these matches they just feel like they could use that extra push right, and not all of them can get all that big attention on next week's show.
I don't think you're wrong. But at the same time, I mean, it's clear that throughout these episodes, their main focus is on like all the top programs, and I would say in Mox Kingston, in MJF versus Jericho, even I would say in like Omega and Paige, I think they've done really well. Like those matches alone, I think would be enough to sell somebody on this pay-per-view. And then when you look on paper, the strength of this card, between Cody versus Darby Allin, or the promise of like a next iteration of this kind of Broken Matt Hardy cinematic match. Even Cheetah versus Rose or Bucks and FTR, like that to me, like just on paper,
they're not. Those matches aren't selling the show.
Well, FTR and Bucks.
Oh, FTR and Bucks. Yeah, sorry, I was talking about like the Elite Deletion and the women's title match. Like those are. I do think for Omega and Page, I still would want like that one sit down or something next week from them, beyond just their meeting in the finals.
Yeah. I don't disagree, but I also think that AEW pay-per-views are very much sold on what's on paper. I mean, of course, it matters like what storyline you have as well. But for an AEW crowd, and especially on a pay-per-view, they're just looking for hot matches, and I think this card is stacked. Like
it's a very stacked show in terms of like big matches. So, and I would keep it at this. I don't think you need to add on more. I hope they learn from All Out that. Doing a 4+ hour show is not necessary. This looks like a lengthy show.
This is going to go 4+.
Moxley and Kingston's going to get like 20 or so. Yeah. Cody and Darby's probably at least 15. FTR and the Bucks could be 30. Omega and Page could be 25. Like there could be some lengthy matches on this show.
I predict it'll go over 4.
Yeah, it's possible. Like even Hardy and Guevara, like that's not going to be quick.
No.
Omega does his elaborate entrance, quoting Vice, ESPN, SI. He's a trailblazer. He's got an old high school buddy that resides in North Carolina. So we're going to keep that joke running.
Yeah, I wonder why North Carolina.
And then the Sweepers are back with lucha masks on.
Well, I guess they never really left. I mean, it's the same set of tapings, but yeah.
So Kenny Omega and Penta L0M, a rematch from All In. And Omega comes out and he's got his t-shirt on, and Phoenix is in Penta's corner, and then Omega reveals underneath the AAA Mega Heavyweight title that he beat Phoenix for, that he lays down on the mat.
Yeah, a title he hasn't acknowledged in months. Like, is this the main title in AAA?
Yeah. This is the title he's was announced this week. He'll be defending if Triple Mania.
So they just haven't had a champion in like 9-10 months.
Well, Omega can't go to Mexico, so the title's been not in circulation.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad.
So they trade chops. Penta's glove comes off, and Omega takes the glove and backhands Penta with the glove. Penta is then attacked with the glove further, and then as Kenny is showboating, Penta catches him with the big chop. We see Penta hit a Tope Con Hero, crashing into the barricade, and then delivers some big leg kicks to Omega. They fight over the barricade onto the water cooler, where Omega DDTs him, and then Omega hits his own Tope Con Hero. In the ring, he hits him with the Snapdragons, V-trigger, and kicks out, and Omega is doing his over-the-top pleading to the referee, Paul Turner. Another V-trigger, and the One-Winged Angel gets blocked, and there would be numerous counters to the One-Winged Angel by Penta. Penta then sends him to the ramp and hits a Canadian Destroyer coming off the turnbuckle. As he goes for the package pile driver, it's hit. Omega kicks out. He's blocking these pump handles and then catches Penta coming off the ropes with another V-trigger. The One-Winged Angel is fought off, and Penta gets the arm and snaps it back. And they're explaining that right arm could be affecting the One-Winged Angel, but then he blocks the pump handle, elbows with the bad arm. He comes back punching with the left hand, and then hits him with the One-Winged Angel as normal and wins it in 17 minutes, 16 seconds, and Kenny advances to take on Hangman Page in the finals on November 7th.
I thought this was like a main event that like definitely delivered on what you might expect from a Kenny Omega like main event. And maybe my tastes are just like different these days, because like I felt like it was more of a style that just kind of relies a bit more on big moves and big kickouts, when maybe my tastes at the moment are just a bit more in like storytelling within a match. I thought it was a good match. I didn't think it was great. And maybe that just comes down to my personal taste.
I thought it was a really spectacular effort from the two, that this is my Pollock Provision match that should have had the crowd. of everything here. Like, this was totally tailored for people losing their minds at, dude, he kicked out of the package pile driver. And to me, like, canned audio is great. It's impossible to replicate like a screaming crowd of 2,000 people reacting to this. But I thought it was spectacular. I mean, they did a whole lot of stuff.
See, I feel like for me, it's like, you know, kicking out of a package pile driver is cool, but I think it would be so much cooler if like the package pile driver meant something, you know, like it was like if there's story attached to that package pile driver, like it was like, and like that to me is the difference between a good Kenny Omega match and a great Kenny Omega match. You know, when like there is sort of like, you know, like when somebody, like when the Bucks are doing like the golden trigger to him, you know, like when there's a bit more history attached to it. You can't expect that, of course, in every single match. But yeah, I don't know. For me, there's something missing. I don't know. This is just because, like, man, in Lucha Underground, like that arm snap, like that was, the guy's arm is broken. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that was a significant injury. And, you know, just here in this world, it's not. Like Matt Jackson took it a few weeks ago or last week, didn't he? And then Omega here, like this. It's just a spot.
It's just a spot. And to me, it was kind of cool to see him, like he's punching back with the left hand. But I mean, it didn't ultimately, he struggled a little, but hits the one-winged angel. Like at least, you know, he has to go a different route to beat Penta because of this. I could have done without the arm snapping.
I mean, it's one of his most recognized, you know, moves at this point. Realistically, yeah, like it would be great if, you know, it was like the status of a punt, you know, something that you use to take a guy out for an extended amount of time. But for now, maybe, you know, maybe he's just using it to get established. I mean, yeah.
So that was Dynamite, a rare, well, not so rare, taped edition of the show, and going against Halloween Havoc. Do you get a good sense? Do you think like Halloween Havoc, it's going to be like a noticeable bump, no bump? What do you see happening? Like I don't see the outcome being different in terms of, you know, what all the demos are going to say and the audience, but like what kind of rise do you see NXT getting out of this week?
I definitely think it might be a lot closer than maybe people might be giving like NXT credit for. Like I definitely see NXT as the bigger show tonight. I had curiosity as to, you know, how it would look, but ultimately, like, Dynamite was a very enjoyable show. I thought it had pretty good matches, really good storytelling. If you're kind of on the Dynamite path, you're probably curious about NXT. You might flip over to watch it a little bit, but then you might just kind of settle on Dynamite once the nostalgia has worn off. But I also don't know how NXT was like paced. You know, maybe they had something really good built up for the end that kept people's attention. I'll say, judging by like our feedback tonight, it actually seems kind of low for both shows. So usually though, Dynamite, I feel like we get a whole lot more, but I don't know. Well, it's kind of hard to predict.
Well, we'll see what happens on Thursday. We've got, oh man, ratings and earnings reports dropping together. What an exciting afternoon.
You got the charts? I guess Brandon's got the charts ready.
Oh yes. Or MJF.
Yes.
So on the forum, tonight's show got an 8.5. So a strong number from AEW.
Yeah, really
Sean
good.
Sean from Albany writes, thoroughly enjoyed tonight's show, especially the main event. That was a pay-per-view quality match between Kenny and Penta. The rest of the show flew by. MJF and Jericho was good, especially the nod to the Trump Town Hall with the reference to Jericho's smile. My only downside is that I'm not a fan of the stipulation for FTR and the Bucks. This match doesn't need it, and to me signals a possible screwy finish. That said, Full Gear is looking stacked, and hopefully will totally deliver.
Screwy finish. I mean, like, I definitely, like, AEW has earned the benefit of the doubt at this point, like, that they would not do something that would be so dissatisfying. Like, what has been the most screwy finish that we've seen, like, in AEW?
I mean, we got John Silver in there tonight.
You're right. Yeah, today was actually a pretty screwy finish with like Arn hitting the guy with the clipboard and then having John Silver with the kick as well. Yeah, that was like a very WWE thing.
Like I think with the Bucks and FTR, it's the stipulation. Like that's a classic stipulation that it's like, okay, the babyface is putting everything on the line, and it's like a wink that, okay, he's coming through. And this one, they're trying to plant a seed of doubt because Cody failed when he put this stipulation in place.
Yeah, or it could be them actually wanting to go through with it for whatever crazy reason. They might have a great idea to tell the story, but I agree. I don't think a match like this, which was already a dream match, needs it. If anything, it's probably something you would save for a rematch. If the Bucks were unsuccessful, they could come back and say, give us one more shot. If we lose, we'll never challenge for the belts again. That's something you might even want to save. So we'll see where they go with it. We go to Nolan from Vaughn, who says, I really enjoyed the show tonight. Full Gear is shaping up to be AEW's best pay-per-view yet, with an absolutely amazing lineup. Seems they really want to redeem themselves for All Out, which was a mediocre show by their standards. Kenny and Penta killed it in the main event tonight. So excited for Kenny versus Hangman at the pay-per-view, and if it were up to me, my ideal scenario would be Kenny winning at Full Gear, then beating Moxley for the title, and building towards a rematch with Hangman at next year's All Out pay-per-view, where hopefully there could be a big crowd in attendance. But based on the current state of the U.S., I'm not going to hold my breath for that. 8.5 out of 10 show. Yeah, interesting choice of words. Yes, 8.5 out of 10.
And Raymond from Sacramento, my feedback is to recommend people check out more of Layla Hirsch's matches. She had a good match against Hikaru Shida on Dark, showed out tonight against Serena Deeb, and has a catalog of other matches from Beyond Wrestling at independentwrestling.tv. Keep an eye on her.
I hope they pick her up. She offers something different from the rest of the roster. I don't think the roster really has a known shooter in the women's division at the moment, and she's very convincing. I've seen her on Bloodsport. I hope they sign her.
Well, that's going to wrap up Rewind-A-Dynamite. You can go check out Up Next with their whole review of Halloween Havoc and their costume contest. Are they going to be naming a winner? Did they state that? Gotta have a winner in a costume contest.
Can't have a costume contest without a winner, so I would think so.
I think Braden was he went as Hangman Page.
Is that right? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he had quite the
don't spoil it.
Put out.
YouTube.com/upnext.
That's just a tease. Go check out the rest of the costumes from the Up Next crew. Wai and I will be back on Friday night, Rewind to SmackDown for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe. We're going live at 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will be taking your calls after SmackDown. So check out all of that, postwrestling.com for all the latest news. That's it. Goodbye. Check out King of the Ring 95.